Hello and welcome. My name is Stephanie Fields, and I am the department chair here at the University of Arizona Global Campus in the Early Childhood Programs Department. And I'm also the host of this session, From Deficit Thinking to Asset-Based Perspectives, How Reframing Mental Models About Student Potential Can Improve Outcomes. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, and we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you would like to use it, click the Show Captions button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now, I am pleased to introduce you to instructor Sue Small and Dr. Crystal McCabe. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm Crystal
Thank you.
McCabe, a full professor here in the College of Education at Grand Canyon University, where I've been teaching since 2013. I have a mix of degrees and background in education and psychology. With nearly 2 decades of experience in education, I've had the opportunity, which I feel super blessed, to be able to present at conferences over the years and share my passion for fostering relationships, building community, and supporting educators in achieving balance and well-being, especially in the online setting. Outside of work, I love spending time with the other Dr. McCabe, my husband, and our 2 sons, Gavin and Noah, where you can find us usually at a hockey rink or basketball court cheering them on. It is my pleasure now to introduce my colleague, give her the chance to share about her background.
Well, thank you, Crystal. Just so you all know, I am going to be looking at my notes and I have multiple screens. So if my head turns, I'm not I'm not avoiding you all on the screen. I am instructor Sue Small, and I am a full-time online instructor at GCU. I am a wife, I'm a mom, and I'm a Nana, which I have to say that is my most treasured title. I have been at GCU since 2011. And before that, I taught high school math for 7 years. And then previously, I taught preschool, first grade, kindergarten, a menagerie of things. In my role at GCU, I work with a very diverse population. I work all the way from high school students that are doing courses while they're in high school, as well as the oldest student that I have had was an 80-year-old woman who wanted to go back and get her degree. She really felt like it was never too late. And it was a privilege to watch her and see her succeed. And it's also a privilege to see everybody in between. I have a bachelor's degree in Christian education, and then I have a master's in teaching with an emphasis in small groups from Grand Canyon. Learning is a journey for me, and it is something that I hope to always incorporate in my life. When I'm not teaching, I spend time playing pickleball, which is a new sport in the last year, and also spending time with my family. We have 5 grandchildren here in Phoenix, and so there's always birthdays or sporting events that we are very active in. I'm excited to be here with all of you and to share this presentation with my colleague, Dr. McCabe.
Sue, do you want to?
Yep.
There we go. And to the next one.
Yep.
Perfect. So our hope today is that we can move from focusing on what students lack to recognize their unique strengths, cultures, and experiences that they bring. It's about examining our beliefs and how our language shapes expectations, then intentionally applying asset-based practices that will empower every learner to feel valued and capable. In doing so, we move from deficit thinking to inclusive, strength-centered teaching. And so what we would like to do is we would like to have you share with us we want you to introduce yourself. We're going to use the Mentimeter. I'm going to pop it in the chat as well as you can use the QR code. But we would like you to share with us one asset. So introduce yourself to us by sharing one asset that you bring to your students or your team. And whenever you're using technology, it is always such a wonderful thing when we can start to see words popping up on a screen to know that it's actually working. I'll give it about another minute to see. I love what I've seen so far, and we can switch and share screen so that you guys can see as well. All right. So hopefully you guys should be able to see it now. Love seeing these though. Understanding, patience, passion, enthusiasm, leadership, respect their experiences. These are amazing assets that you guys are bringing to the table. All right.
So we're going to start off with talking about mental models and understanding what they are. Mental models are actually our internal beliefs. Many of them are unspoken or even unconscious, and they can affect our thoughts on important topics like intelligence, potential student potential, the reason we teach, and what it means to learn successfully. Some examples of this: every one of us have beliefs about who is likely in our class to succeed, who might succeed in college, who might not, what good participation looks like in an online class, or even what kinds of students are quote unquote prepared. These beliefs shape our actions and our expectations and the classroom choices we make, even if we're not always aware of them. The mental model lenses through which we view our students and our classrooms, sometimes they help us, but sometimes they hold us and our students back. We're going to reflect on what mental models are, where they come from, and how we can make sure that we support all our students so that they can reach their potential. So first, some common examples are the deficit model, the asset-based model, the fixed mindset, growth mindset. Those two have been talked a lot over the last probably 10, 15 years. And then finally, a student-centered mindset. These mental models shape our expectations that we set for our students. So our goal is to think about our own mental models, what we bring. We're going to question some assumptions that might limit us in our teaching and limit our students, and actively choose strategies that can create a more inclusive and empowering classroom for all. Now, our goal is to focus on two specific mental models that educators often bring to their students. We're going to concentrate on deficit thinking versus asset-based thinking. Deficit thinking is a mindset where we focus on a student's limitations, what they lack, where they fall short, or what's wrong with their background or experiences. For example, we might label students as at risk or unprepared, or highlight gaps rather than their strengths. This often results in lower expectations, reduced opportunities, and students feeling less valued or capable. Now, in contrast, an asset-based thinking perspective is about seeing and building on what students already bring with their skills, life experiences, cultural backgrounds, languages, resilience, and perspectives. And instead of asking, what can't this student do? We ask, what strength does this student have, and how can I use them to support learning? The shift is really important. When we view students through an asset-based lens, we tend to set higher expectations, more meaningful participation, and invite every student to contribute. Research shows this leads to increased engagement, stronger relationships, and better outcomes for all students. Now let's focus a little bit on just deficit thinking. Well, a key characteristic of deficit thinking is having a glass half empty perspective towards our student. And I don't know about you, but not just students, but in life, that can happen to us too in our perspective. So what we're thinking of is what they lack or what they don't bring instead of what they bring. So some common ways this can appear in the classroom is using negative labels, lowering expectations, focusing on weaknesses, even individually with students, and bringing that up as the point of conversation, misinterpreting their behavior. For instance, I have a student that might not participate in class, they've fallen off, and I might think they don't care, they don't want to pass. However, as I delve deeper into the situation, they have a very good reason. Or a one size fits all approach. This is how it is, this is how it has to be, and not expanding that perspective. Well, why do you think this is important? Well, these half glass empty assumptions limit, and if they go unchecked, we risk reinforcing harm rather than supporting growth. How can it impact specific students? Again, lowered expectations, reduced confidence, limited opportunities for all, possible isolations or sense of exclusion, reinforced stereotypes, or decreased dropout risk. Okay, Crystal, take it away.
So we want to have you think for a minute. Stop and recall a moment when you might have made an assumption about a student based on challenges rather than their strengths. I know for me, this happens. Unfortunately, I hate to admit it, but almost maybe daily with as many students as I teach. It can start from as simple as, I don't know if your students that you encounter in your classes, if they're able to change their profiles or how they do their name, but it's usually, I can't help the thought when I open up the classroom and a student has changed their name and it's all in lowercase. And I'm thinking, you're in college. We have to make our first letter an uppercase letter. It just has to happen. Or when they do it when they're submitting their work. Or because I teach completely online, when a student messages me and says, "Oh, I don't have a computer." I'm always thinking, well, this is not going to go well. This is not going to go well. Or they're going to use their phone. Also not going to go well. I mean, maybe we'll get there one day when a phone can do all the things that a computer can do, but it's not ideal. And so I know for me, unfortunately, this assumption pops into my head just because of all of the years of experience. You start to know, okay, well, there's a trajectory when this is how we start. And so just take a moment, reflect on maybe when you've made this same type of assumptions about students based on challenges rather than their strengths. Oh, I kind of want to know what the
Whoops,
lesson
go ahead.
was that academic affairs might have learned. If you feel like chat, unmuting or typing in the chat, if you can't unmute and tell us, or Haley, yes, Haley, if you want to share with us, I'd love to hear what happened.
Yeah, so you asked when you made assumptions about a student based on their challenges. And so I assumed that a student had the same challenges as I did when I was a student, and I was a non-traditional student. And my intention with the interaction with the student was to really motivate them and build them up. And I was saying, you can do this, you can do this. I finished. If I can do it, you can do it. And they were like, full stop. I am not having the same experience as you, Haley. Like, you're not comparing apples to apples, basically. And so I, with all positive intention, right, was trying to build them up and get them to help them to complete their course, and backfired on me a little bit because I made some assumptions about their experience versus my own. So thank you for letting me come off mute
Oh,
and share.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think we're all guilty. We're all guilty of this moment
Mhm.
taking place. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I can remember where I was sitting in my office. I can remember the
Mhm.
student's face like it is clear as day. And this was probably 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Yep.
Thank
I told Sue when we were creating the presentation that I had a very good geographical lesson with the same thing when I had a student very first day of class, which was very proactive of them. And so it really should have like altered my thinking. But they said, the school GCU is off for 2 weeks during Christmas, but the school I work at is off for 3. And so I won't have access to internet. And I thought to myself, well, I just started listing all of the things proactively to them. Well, you could go to the library, or maybe you could go to Starbucks or a local McDonald's or somewhere that has internet. And I'm just naming places, naming places, naming places, only to learn that this student lived in a very remote part of Alaska. And he kindly explained to me the plane he would need to take to go to any of these places. And in the end, because I'm thinking, oh wow, okay, this was a huge learning experience for me to realize like how remote some locations can be. But again, what he did, he had a challenge. He proactively, the school gave him keys to the school so that that week that he was still off, he could go and use the internet there at the school. So our students are resilient. They do have these strengths that we need to shift our thinking towards. So thank you guys so much for taking that moment to pause. When we talk about asset-based thinking, we're really talking about mindset shift. Wow, that was like a really weird combo today. For a long time, education has focused on what students are missing, the gaps, the struggles, the things they can't do yet. I remember we called it the Swiss cheese method when I was in the public school system before moving into higher education. And we would take those grids of the standards the students hadn't mastered yet. We would highlight them and we'd make our little Swiss cheese holes to find out where all of those gaps were, because that was what we were focused on. Asset-based thinking turns that around. It asks us to start by noticing what students do bring, their strengths, their cultural backgrounds, their lived experiences, and the unique perspectives that shape who they are as learners. Every student has value, ability, and a story worth honoring. Our job as educators is to recognize those assets and nurture them so that students can build on their own foundation of strengths. When we see our students through this lens, we create space where they feel respected, capable, and seen, not for their deficits, but for their potential. Our perceptions influence our students' confidence, persistence, and the sense of belonging, especially among marginalized groups. And so on this slide here, you can kind of see that shift there. Now we're going to talk about what asset-based thinking is. Let's look at it as it contrasts with the deficit thinking. That deficit lens focuses on what students lack, while an asset lens focuses on the strengths and experiences they already have. Our perceptions really do shape the outcomes. The way we view students can either build or break their confidence, persistence, and sense of belonging, especially for those from marginalized groups. Reframing is the key here. And so on this slide, you can see where the reframing is taking place. It's the process of catching deficit-based thinking and those thoughts when they come and intentionally shifting them towards those strengths. Instead of asking, what's wrong with this student, we begin asking, what's strong about this student? That small shift changes everything for them and for us. So you can see there just some of those examples. First generation students lack academic preparation. Maybe they're not coming from a family that promoted education or has the experience or that ability to support them because they've been there before. But instead, we want to shift that thinking to first generation students bring resilience, initiative, adaptability. They've overcome all of these challenges, overcome the challenges of not being raised in a family maybe that promoted education, and they're still pushing themselves forward to do it. Online students are less engaged, just like Sue had mentioned earlier when she had a student that had kind of checked out. And I have those on the daily too. Online students demonstrate independence, time management, and digital fluency. We hope anyway.
Can I jump in here for a minute with an
Absolutely,
example?
please.
Well, this past weekend, I had a student who had fallen off in class, and I just thought, okay, they stopped. Well, then I got a message on Saturday that from this student that said, I've lost my glasses and I can't see without them. And he had missed 2.5 weeks of class. Well, after I read it, I thought I was kind of, my first impulse was not positive. I will just admit that. Okay. It was from a deficit lens. And I thought, nope, I'm going to walk away. So I left. I didn't even respond until later that night. And I allowed him to submit the missing assignments. And do you know that by yesterday at 5 o'clock, he was missing 4 assignments. They were all submitted. Now, were they done perfectly? No. But obviously, there was an issue with money or he had to order them or whatever. But my deficit thinking was like, come on, don't you have an extra pair of glasses? But then when I gave him a chance, he shined.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm sure we all have those moments too where that has definitely taken place. That last one there,
Whoops,
non-traditional,
sorry.
sorry, you're okay. Non-traditional students are behind.
Mm.
So, and we might have that. We might have thought that sometimes when they're coming to me with their, lack of a computer, or maybe they have their lowercase, their name written in lowercase. We have to think to ourselves, they bring career experiences and real world perspectives. And I know, like Haley had shared about that experience that she had had. I know for me too, when I get students who are non-traditional and they come in and they've probably done this for you guys as well, but they'll say, I feel like I'm behind. I feel like I'm late to the game coming back to get my degree now after all these years. And I'm always reminding them they're bringing so much experience from their career and life that they're going to be able to bring to their future classroom, to their future occupation. And it's like, this is great. This was you're exactly where you're meant to be. And so I do that for them all of the time. And I say that's just a natural thing that I say. It's all about shifting it sometimes initially in our head in that mindset. And so why this shift matters, making that mindset shift. When we take an asset-based approach, the impact goes far beyond how we think. It affects how students experience learning. When students feel seen and valued for who they are, they're more likely to stay engaged, persist through the challenges, and succeed. Culturally relevant teaching plays a big role in that. When learning connects to students' lived realities, it becomes more meaningful and purposeful and personal. Recognizing assets also moves us towards equity and inclusion. It challenges the deficit narratives that have often defined students by race, language, and gender, or socioeconomic background. When we intentionally name and nurture strengths, we help dismantle those old stories. Ultimately, this is about empowerment. When we see potential in our students and communicate that belief, they begin to see it too. When that confidence grows, motivation increases, and learning truly transforms. Here. Oh, I lost. There we go. Okay. So with this shift here, and you can kind of see these concrete strategies popping up. In online learning spaces, asset-based thinking is just as powerful as it is in the traditional classroom, and maybe even more important. One way to start is by building strength-based profiles. Through simple connection points, you can use introductory discussion boards, welcome surveys, short video introductions. Sometimes these are already built into your classes to learn about student goals, interests, and life experiences. Then you can reference those details in your feedback, for example. It shows students that you see them even across a screen. Um, sorry, lost my space, my place here. For culturally responsive teaching, students bring their backgrounds into our course content. You can invite them to connect readings or theories to their own communities, their workplaces, or their lived experiences. Use diverse examples, authors, and case studies so that students recognize themselves in the material. Reframing the language. It matters online, especially in announcements, rubrics, feedback. Phrases like, keep developing your ideas instead of this needs work. or you're building strong skills in instead of you're missing this. Reinforces growth and potential. Even your tone conveys mindset in virtual spaces. And for integrating student voice, give choice whenever possible. I know sometimes we're stuck to our curriculum, but maybe there's some spaces where this is possible. Let students select topics for discussions or projects that align with their personal or professional interests. Use mid-course check-ins or anonymous polls to gather feedback and show that their input shapes the learning experiences. And when students have ownership and feel heard, engagement and persistent naturally grows, even in their full online environment. And maybe your courses have it, but we also have, I know at our university, we have surveys that go out at the end of a course for them to do where they can rate the, instructor and the course itself. They can also share like, hey, there were links that didn't work in the class, or, share different changes they'd like to see happen to the curriculum. And so that's just another way to actually integrate that student voice as well.
Now you have an opportunity to shift that mindset, if it happens to be there, from deficit to asset thinking. What we have is we have 3 different scenarios that are on a Padlet that you'll have a chance to comment on. And what I want you to think about and reflect is how deficit thinking can appear in these 3 scenarios. So the first one, James posts have grammar errors. He seems unprepared for college writing. Think, how can we change that to asset? The second one, Lena often submits her work late, and it feels like she doesn't take the course seriously. And then the final one, Maria submits assignments but avoids the discussion boards. Again, it feels or seems like she's disconnected from the class community. So we're going to share the Padlet, which is on the slide. Did you share it in the chat as well,
Yeah.
Crystal? Okay. So we're going to give you about five to 6 minutes. Think about these 3 stories and then put your suggestion on how your perspective can be changed from the deficit example to asset-based thinking.
I love what I'm seeing so far. Can share. I'll switch over and share my screen so you guys can see it.
Do I need to stop sharing, Crystal?
No, it allows me to do it. So
Okay.
that was an easy switch over. When I started to think about James's post too, having the grammar errors. I see he may have limited time and be in a rush. And that is actually something I think about too with our students who are non-traditional. They're managing so many different things in their life. And so I often actually tell them, this is if you have an opportunity that you can, uh, pull up a Word document and maybe there's some posts that you want to make and you can start pre-typing them out.
Mhm.
That way you can
Absolutely.
check your spelling and grammar. You can check your word count in case those are things that, you guys have requirements for as well. As well as like even a time management skill where maybe I'm at the hockey rink watching my son have practice and I can be looking in the forums, but I have to post over multiple days. So I'll just start pre-typing some of my posts and stuff on a Word document. But, maybe that could be a suggestion that I might share with James to help him
Mhm.
uh, correct some of those grammar and spelling errors and then remind him again of that word count. But you guys are doing a great job with this thinking. But that made me think of that when I saw that suggestion about the limited time and being in a rush. And that is also a really great thought too, the fact that there are those errors that you can see in his grammar. He's very much likely not using Chat GPT, so he is being authentic and stuff. So that is huge. That actually is really huge and could definitely be shared with him. So you guys are doing an awesome job with this reframing. Yep, sharing those resources, different tools that could be beneficial. I don't know if any of you have had this too, with our third scenario there with Maria, and she is, we think she might be disconnected from the class because she doesn't want to engage in the participation part in the forums. I have students who will come to me and they just say like, I'm not comfortable or I'm not sure what to say. I know I make a bunch of posts in the forum and I let them know you can always reply to me as well. Like it doesn't have to necessarily always be your classmate. I try to put a variety of different things out there because I know sometimes if we're all just replying to the same discussion questions, maybe it gets a little bit mundane and like what else can be said here, about this. And so I like to spice it up and add a little bit more in there to give them other things to talk about.
I do that too, Crystal. I will talk to students and they'll say, I'm an introvert, or I just really
Mhm.
don't know what to say. I don't want to talk to other people.
Yep.
And so having those options, I'll say, for the first 3 weeks, because I do teach an introductory course, just respond to mine. And then each week add, try just responding to one other student and then two other students. And I have seen success with that
Mhm.
suggestion.
Yep. Yep. Start small. These are great suggestions and feel free, obviously, you guys have access to this. Feel free to keep adding to it. Is a great way for us to kind of come back because these are probably very common challenges we've all experienced in our classrooms as ways to like help us on those days when it's maybe not as easy for us to reframe our thinking and shifting that mindset to a more strength-based, more positive approach. But you guys have done a great, great job with these.
Go on. You ready to go on, Crystal?
I
Or do
am
you want to
ready.
give them a couple more minutes? Okay.
You can go ahead. And so our last bit here for you guys is just this commitment to change. And so what's one thing, and you can pop this into the chat, but sit there and think about it for a minute. What's one thing that you're going to try in your classroom to shift from that deficit to the more asset-based thinking? Or if this is something that you are very, very skillful at, go ahead and share
Well,
that too, so
sorry.
we could all hear those suggestions.
Sorry.
You're good. Because the thing truly about the reframing is honestly, once you really get in the habit of continuing to practice it, it makes it a lot easier for you to identify it in yourself. Monday morning when my students submit on Sunday nights, Monday morning, yes, I'm kind of already prepared when I open the computer that there's going to be a huge inbox of excuses for why their assignments weren't submitted. Oh, you can put
Hmm.
it in the chat, Teresa. You can put it in the chat, the one thing that you're committed to. So I think it's that mental preparation too, like, okay, I know I'm going to open this. I know that these are all going to be excuses for why they couldn't get it in. And that's okay because life does happen, and you know what? They're not just giving up. I can already reframe it. They're not giving up. They're not, withdrawing from the class. They're actually sharing with me a challenge that they had, and then I can talk to them about how we can correct that and how we can move forward so they can get back on track. All right, let's see what some of these are so far. Yep. Talking to them, absolutely. Talking about their time management. Yes, more announcements that preempt some of the issues I know exist. I actually have a post that I put in because, like Sue, I teach an introductory course, and the post literally says that life is going to happen. And I kind of explain, like, I share a bunch of examples of the things that typically fall into my Monday inbox. Um, and then I tell them, like, let's make a plan right from week one. Let's make a plan. What are we going to do? What is going to be your backup plan when life does happen? And all of these different things, can take place. Mhm. Heather, thank you so much for sharing that. I actually have a background in special education too. Yep. And I think sometimes we just kind of always see that through that lens. Very, very good. Mhm. Awesome, awesome job, Haley. And feel free to continue to share what you're going to try in your classroom, but we also wanted to leave some time for questions as well.
I can pop on and fill some of the space. Thank you both so much for giving us this perspective to consider from the lens of really supporting our students and really supporting those who we serve. So I just appreciate that so much. I think when we understand more of the perspectives, it gives us that, teaching above and beyond where we were to really kind of meet the needs of our students. And I love that. I was in a session yesterday, honored to be in a session yesterday with Bill Davis led it, and it reminds me that we want them to be strong in content, right? We want to be really great teachers of content, but there's a whole lot in terms of durable skills, in terms of soft skills that we want to be models of. And whether it be, having the mindset to allow for grace or not let our judgments get in the way, it's very important to do that alongside being great teachers of content. And I really couldn't help but think about that as you spoke today. So I appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yep.
And again, just to get us continuing to go, feel free to pop on and ask those questions, or feel free to use the chat and continue your reflection. But I want to just take a moment and thank instructor Sue Small and Dr. McCabe for being with us today. Thank you for your audience, for your participation in today's session. Yes. Haley happened to put a survey link in the chat to nominate TLC presentations for conference awards. So please click that and share your feedback on this specific presentation. The link, it will be in the chat for the remainder of the session. So again, I just want to conclude as we wind down with a big thank you to our presenters, and for the rest of the audience members, have a great time in the remainder of the TLC sessions.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Here is a slide with a couple references that we used. And then finally, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This presentation, and I will just share as we're wrapping up, really has come alive in my teaching over the last month. I I tend to be more understanding and I tend to follow the asset-based thinking. But I was able to even take some of the examples that we had, and I had to remind myself, don't go to deficit, focus on the asset.
And reframe our thinking for sure. It leads us to a new starting spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it's a matter of just like making sure that it continues. So whether it's a little post-it note you put on your screen or something like that, just as that visual reminder of like, okay, because the more we practice it, the more it stays. And obviously with Sue and I working on the presentation, it makes it very, near in the front of our head to do that, and then, sometimes it falls back. Sometimes our own personal struggles in our life might make us more cynical and we end up in that negative mind space. So having those little reminders wherever we can to get us back into that mindset.
And for some students, it'll be a difference maker, right? I mean, it really will be a difference maker, whether they can continue, will continue, wish to continue, have the, the strength to continue. We are a huge determining factor in that for them. So yeah, I love that.
And I teach future, we teach future teachers. I teach future teachers, but I always tell them that, you really have the opportunity to make or break a child's spirit.
Yes.
And so, really thinking about how that interaction's going to go. And it's the same thing even with our adult learners too.
I was going to say, yeah, with my adult learners, which, like, as I said, I have a range of ages, but a lot of students are coming back after years of not being in school. And so it's really encouraging to hear their stories, but then also to be able to be that person that can encourage them and give them the resources and kind of guide them along the way, rather than they feel defeated when they start. A lot of students do, but then to see them by the end of the class be able to succeed is really why I teach. It's the joy that I have to see the improvement, what they have learned. That is the light bulb that goes off in my head, and that's why I enjoy what I do.
Yeah. That's your why, and that will be eventually you will be part of someone else's why, and that's a pretty good feeling. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you both, and audience, again, thank you. The URL is there to the survey, and we will see you all in another session of TLC.